This episode of the Bloody Vegans podcast is brought to you by VegOne and the good folks over at the Vegan Society. VegOne is the multivitamin and mineral supplement designed by vegans for vegans. It was introduced back in 2005, updated in 2021 with an incredible new plastic-free package, and contains all of those key vitamins and minerals that everyone will tell you when you transition into a plant-based diet, into a vegan lifestyle, that you need to think about, and you absolutely do. So, what's in there? You've got B2, B6, B12, D3, iodine, selenium, and folic acid. So all of those kind of key ones you need to consider when you're starting out, or perhaps you've been here for some time. And it's all in a convenient once-a-day chewable form, which is super helpful, right? It's just £12.70 for 6 months worth. And they come in two amazing flavours. You've got orange and you've also got blackcurrant. Orange is a personal favourite of mine. I'm definitely team orange when it comes to VegOne. So if you'd like to know more and you're interested in picking up your 6 month supply, head over to thevegansociety.com, search for VegOne, and you can pick up some right there, delivered straight to your door. Enjoy the episode. Okay, Michael, it'd be awesome to get started with a little bit of your personal journey into the world of veganism. What brought you here?
Wow. I suppose there's a multitude of things. I suppose the classic cowspiracy was like many people when they saw that. I think my journey to veganism starts probably from when I was a child, from when I was a kid. I was just fascinated by the Planet Channel on Discovery Planet, that's it. And I just would want to watch animals all day. Which is maybe, I think my parents thought it was kind of weird because all my friends were watching cartoons and MTV, and I was just fascinated by frogs, the poison dart frogs in the jungle. So I always knew I had an affiliation to wildlife and animals. But obviously when you're that young, you don't really have a choice of what you eat. Then I got into my late teens, went to university and playing sport. And the more you do into research into nutrition, the more you discover things. And even just the very basics of understanding how we process protein inside, and how whey protein just doesn't get absorbed or used very, very efficiently by our bodies. It just started making me think. And then you start looking in the whey industry and thinking of, you're talking about the shit of the industry, of the shit of the dairy industry. And then in my very early 20s, I would say I classed myself as an environmentalist. But then I said to myself, how can I be an environmentalist if I contributed to the system? So the first thing I did is I just stopped drinking dairy and products. And then, bloody hell, within a couple of years, I think it was like 3 years later, I said, you know what? No more. I just said, let me try it. The funny thing is actually, I went to a co-op, and in the free, this should be 8 years ago now. And in the co-op freezer, there was a bean burger, and I was like, this is going to taste like crap, but I'll try it. And I went home and tried it, and it was actually fairly pleasant for my initial expectations. And you know what? I just never bought meat again. It's just like, there wasn't this grandiose moment of like, that was as funny as it sounds. That was it, a bean burger from Co-op. That was pretty average. It was just, and then I just never bought meat again. I'd say I don't have an addictive personality, so I can either leave it or take it, and then, I felt the first month, I just felt really healthy, felt really lean. And I felt, when I say lean, I don't mean skinny, I mean just felt like my body was going through this phase of energy reproduction, just felt great. And then just never turned back. Yeah. And that is really, in essence, what it is. But I'd say my journey is, I would say that I'm not a vegan that's, staunch in the system where I'm like, you've got to be this, you've got to be that. For me, I've been around, got friends who are vegans. And for me, when I speak to people, which I think is a different interpretation, and they respect me for that, is I just try to educate them or inspire them. And it's just about meat reduction for me at the moment for them. And I'm not going to be like, you should stop eating or be a vegan or you're a terrible person. And I've had people tell me that, that they've insulted their friends because they're not vegan. I'm like, you're not going to win anything. You're not going to get anywhere, right? So yeah, and if everyone just reduces their meat intake, we're going to get somewhere. Then the ethical question of whether you eat meat is decided down to that individual person, as long as they're informed, as long as they know. But you're seeing a massive shift. People, more and more people. It's great to see because, for whatever reason, if it's ethical from an animal perspective, or it's for the environment, you have varying reasons for it.
Was that always your approach? That sort of, meet people where they are. They, if they're reducing, that's great. That's the only way to get people to move forward. Was that always the approach, or did you kind of find that approach over the course of your sort of veganism?
I think it's just being emotionally intelligent is really important, whether that's in business or whether that's in life. And if you feel like you're being sold something, or you're being forced to do something, you're going to rebel. I know that firsthand as a kid. My need to be different from everyone else. So if someone said to me, "Do this," I'd want to do something else. And maybe that journey to veganism was part of that. Maybe that's because it was so. People that are vegan now, I'm like, whatever. Tried doing it 50 years ago. That was when it's tough. I remember I've got an auntie in Belgium. Went to go and visit her. This is only probably about 5-6 years ago. And going to the supermarket, obviously vegetables and vegans, you can get vegetables, but in terms of like plant-based meats, they just didn't exist. Now you go to the same supermarket in Belgium and they have a whole aisle of fake meats, plant-based meats, all that kind of stuff. So, I diverge slightly, but I think understanding how people work and how to engage with them, I get further speaking to people about their diets in that manner than I do if I said to them, you're a terrible person because you eat meat, or you're a terrible person because you're in the dairy industry. And I have conversations, friends will be like, why? And we could talk about a multitude of things. For me, the standalone, issue is environment. The byproduct of that is I do really love animals, So yeah.
Did you have people come along on the journey with you, or was it quite a solitary pursuit for you?
I think it was solitary at the beginning because I come from a very a lot of my friends rugby players, weightlifting area back in the day. So it was solitary in that sense, but I don't feel like that affected me. It almost gave me more reason to do it.
Yeah.
I did, rather than just following the crowd. It was kind of like a self-discovery of it. And it's still like, to this day, people still talk to me about it and I try and help them, and you have the same misconceptions, and it's kind of like, oh, the food's too expensive. I'm sure your listeners have heard so many reasons. I'm sure a lot of my vegans themselves, they experience the same thing. But it's about tapping into people's choices. If I speak to someone and they say to them, then they're like, they have no qualms with, eating animals. Well, I know personally that person probably wouldn't kill an animal. So for me, that ethics is like, well, that's flawed, but I'm not going to start saying you're a bad person. But then if you can look at it from another perspective and say, what about the environment? Do you care about the environment? Do you realize what we're doing to the planet? And then you start talking about, agriculture and animal feeding, and then you start seeing it tweaking a little bit. It's a multi-pronged approach. I've maybe this is a bit unpopular in your listeners, but I've seen those vegan marches, and some of the language they use. It's like I saw one that was said, what was it? What was it like? It's like all non-vegans are paedophiles or something like that, and it's to do with the cows drinking the calf cow. It's like, what are you going to achieve? All that happened, I saw the picture. All that happened was the comments on the picture were just absolutely bashing this person. You couldn't really see the person, but veganism. What does that do for the industry? What does that do for the movement? Nothing. It just sets us backwards. if you can open and engage a conversation, and I get this, there needs to be drastic measures. I get it. You know, I've literally built a company around that mission. But I think we can be smarter. I think we should allow us to be more stoic. I think, again, maybe I can go into stoicism, and that's something that's changed my life as well. But practicing a stoic philosophy has really helped in that, because I feel like we can be quite emotive when we're so passionate about things, especially some people who are so passionate about veganism and educating people. That passion can then almost seem aggressive sometimes, as I've taken from a more stoic position and acceptance of humanity, and people are going to make mistakes, or they can have their own choices, and how do we talk to them and communicate with them. And I've got friends who are vegetarian now. You know, I've got friends, not many, but I've got a couple of friends who have become vegan because of the discussions we've had. But for me, the most important thing is if I can get them to reduce their meat intake. That for me is the biggest. That for me is the first step, right? I have my mum, for example. You know, working class family, like meat is on the table most days in modern era. You know, the last 10 years, and she probably eats, I'd say, once or twice a week. I'm not going to say, Mum, you're a bad person because you're eating meat, but I'm going to say thank you for contributing to a better system and a better society because you're reducing your intake. You know, I'd rather her eat twice a week than 7 times a week, and that's going to affect the system far greater than her rebelling against me and saying, us not talking, or she thinking that I'm a terrible son. And I get the position that it's still contributing, and the ethics side, but we all have our own ways of dealing with it.
Yeah, I think meeting people where they are is never a bad thing. And I've said this many times on this show, but I always think you have to remember the day before you discovered what you discovered, and how you felt and how you thought. And for most of us who weren't, we weren't born vegan, and so we went through a period of time where we didn't see some of the things that we see now. Yeah. And so I do think you're right that it's not necessarily a wise move to not see that potential position that somebody may be in. Maybe their socio-economic position is not one that's opened them up to those particular views, or there's all kinds of different things, isn't there, of why people might not be where you are. Yeah. And I think also that the other challenge with taking that kind of quite strong position is you're almost saying that you're not prepared to be challenged on other things too, because how would you feel if somebody challenged you on something else that was you felt was perfectly fine, that you just didn't understand yet? Yeah. So I think you've got to be open and accept that you might be wrong.
And I feel like, obviously I'm talking from a position in, I suppose, in London, where I'm sure you have different communities, all different parts of the world, and I've also known vegans who would turn a blind eye to certain things, and maybe some people, the staunch vegans, would be like, they're not vegan, but I know people that are vegan but then don't really go deep into the makeup they wear, and it's like. So, it's like, oh, they don't eat meat. They don't eat, obviously dairy. They don't buy fur. They don't buy leather. But yet, what makeup are you wearing? And they're like, oh, it's this company. And I'm like, have you looked at their practices? And it's kind of like, where do we draw the line? And obviously there's a finite level of you are vegan or you're not vegan, right? And it's like, where do we draw the line? Where do we just try and, it's kind of like it's this de facto, quasi world of what's right and wrong, and all we can do is try and be better. But even for me, it makes more sense to have animal cruelty free nowadays makeup than not. But yeah, everyone.
You're so right. You're so right. There's always something that you would have probably missed. Our world is so, the systems we've created are so. Heavily reliant on the exploitation of animals in various ways that it would almost be, you'd be a better man than me if you figured out every single way that animals have been used in your life, and you can 100% hand on heart say it's been avoided. I mean, one that came to mind. This was quite a while ago now, but I remember it always being a bit of a watershed moment for me, where I had that realization that actually there's a lot going on in the world, and it sounds obvious maybe now, I don't know, but it was my bank account. I had had a bank account with one of the big sort of high street banks. I'd had it since university. They incentivize university students, because the premise is that generally you stick with the same bank forever and all that kind of stuff. So I was with this bank, and then looked into what they were funding, and there was all kinds of fossil fuels in there, and there was animal agriculture and all this kind of stuff. And I was talking about being vegan at the time and so on, and had to find an ethical alternative. And even then, it's very difficult to find somebody in, say, the financing industry that is think,
who did you go with
on the level.
in the end?
Yeah, I went with Triodos in the end. I don't know if you've heard of them. I think they're Bristol in the Netherlands.
Yeah.
I think they've got bases in, and
this isn't a plug.
Their premise is this isn't a plug. I'm not in any way sponsored by Triodos Bank. Maybe I should be. But they at least purport to invest in community projects and things that are more aligned with my ethics. Whether there's absolutely every trace of animal agriculture removed is another question, but it's very difficult to find a bank that is. And that's just one example. You've got energy companies and all kinds of different things.
If you take the Kabbalah theory, how everything is intertwined and interlinked. I think you'd struggle to find anything in the world that isn't linked with the exploitation of animals. And I think if more people, including vegans, take more of a stoic approach, and more of a personal journey and a more personal approach to it, they will become happier. They will impact the system a lot greater, and try to better yourself as opposed to better things that you can't impact. Whether you're screaming, shouting, whether you're educating and talking to people, the calmer you are, the more clearer you are, and the more you get done in that journey to being a better self. Because really, this is all about personal journeys. It's you have your own ethical choice. You cannot in theory, everyone should be free to make their own choices. You should not allow you to be affected emotionally by the choice of someone else. I get it if let's say your partner's not vegan, that's obviously can be quite difficult. But all you could do is try and be better for yourself, and and you'll be a lot happier. And that's the way I try to live. And when people want to engage with you, when people want to discuss with you about veganism and or cutting down meat or being a vegetarian or whatever, that's a different discussion. Then you can talk about those things. But you'll be a lot clearer minded and listen to people's opinions. And 9 out of 10 times when people do let's say play devil's advocate, they're talking about stuff that's misinformation, whether it's there's tons of them, like I don't get enough protein in my diet, it's too expensive, or we should be eating meat, or we're carnivores, and all this kind of stuff. It's like, okay, do some research. And a lot of times, one of my investors was having a bit of a joke, and he was like, send me a picture of his incisor teeth. And I said to him, just go and look it up. Go and find other animals that eat basically a plant-based diet that also have the same teeth as you. And he came back to me and was like, oh, wow, this is actually interesting. And as opposed to me aggressively or even just saying, no, you're wrong, you should be like, it's a way of approaching it I think is fundamentally key here.
It's quite an art, I think, to stay that, like you say, stay that sort of stoic in your responses. Especially because I think the thing for many vegans is it's not necessarily the comment in isolation. It's the fact that that's one of 100 that they might have had in the course of the last couple of weeks and so on. So it does take a real mastery, I think, of your composure and of your ability to respond with a longer term view and think effectively about your communication to not respond just out of sheer frustration sometimes of like this, not like with the one person, but how many people are going to talk to me about incisors or
it's boring.
That kind
But
of thing.
again, it's also choosing when. It's also choosing when, like, to you only have, let's say, what I call velocity, right? You have 100% of your velocity, and that velocity only really, can be used for certain things of the day, whether that's for work, whether it's spending your time with your kids, family. Do you really need to argue or even discuss with someone you don't really care about or someone that doesn't really influence your life? You've got to make a choice.
Yeah.
And sometimes there are times where I'm just like, you know what, you do you. Or you can just make, it's very simple. Go and do some research. What I like to think, what I say to a lot of people now is, you'll find what you want to find online, right? And if someone, is conspiracy theorist and it's right to question things. But if you go and type in X, Y, and Z, you're going to find X, Y, and Z. There's enough, I don't want to diverge the conversation too off, but it happens every day. There's, you see things like that. So misinformation is there, especially with this dawn of social media. But if you try to be objective, you'll find a way to filter out the noise.
You're so right. You will find exactly what you want to find, and you will get your hunch, your opinion, your viewpoint confirmed for you if that's the way you want to look for things. Absolutely, totally agree with that. Let's talk about the business. I'd love to get into that. Where did the idea start, and what is it for folks who don't know?
So I have a company called Gaia's Farm & Co. We are a biotech company that process industrial hemp for its material, environment, and health benefits. We launched, started the company in end of 2020, going, pandemic style. And we launched with products January of this year. How I got into it, I'm very into my environment. I'm very into Mother Earth. I care about the environment. And I was working for a few software companies, building their brand as such. And then I always knew I wanted to work in the environmental sector. And again, it's chance favors a prepared mind. I looked at hemp, and I was like, okay, this is quite an interesting space, and looked at the laws and the reasons it got banned and X, Y, and Z, which we can go into later. But and then I just started reading science papers. I feel like that's rather than going on Google and Wikipedia, I just went really hard into as much available research papers as possible. And the more and more I read, the more and more I was like, wow, this is incredible, and why is this not being utilized? From an environmental perspective and a health perspective. And then I just thought, can I make this happen? And here we are. So from an environmental perspective, hemp is the most sustainable plant known to man, known to, on the planet. It has every single part of it can be used. It's basically a carbon guzzling gladiator. So as we all know, the biggest threat to society right now is climate change. And obviously carbon is part of that problem. Hemp is a carbon sink per acreage. So if you plant 1 acre of hemp, it removes 4 times more carbon dioxide than trees does. And hemp takes 100 days to grow. Wow. Trees takes to maturity, 8 years plus. So from just a pure basic statistic of growing more hemp, you remove more carbon. So then obviously, when that carbon is stored in the plant, it needs to be utilized through processing. You have the stalk, which can be used for hempcrete. You can replace concrete, huge issue in the system. You can replace it with hemp fiber. It's called hempcrete. So you mix hemp curd with lime and water. It's not structural, but you can use it in the same way that you would build on concrete. You would use steel pilings. You can use the flower for medicinal reasons. You can use the roots for medicinal, for makeup, and then obviously what we use is the seeds. So then there's another thing called phytomediation, which is how much nutrients is given back to the soil. A little fact people don't realize is that you can store more carbon in our soil than we can in our atmosphere and our plants. So not looking after our soil is detrimental to us. It's more so for, emerging globalization countries, aka the US, for example, where they use chemicals, pesticides. They want to grow fast because of the demand for the population. So they kill the topsoil. The problem with the topsoil is a lot of carbon is stored there, and when carbon is stored there, you have bacteria and that live off the carbon. So most people know it as organic food, right? Problem with like the label of organic food, it typically is we're expensive. But if people understood the reason why organic is so important, and they would understand why we need to transition into a more I'm not so sure organic way of life is right, because I get it. Some people have different abilities from price sensitivity model, but we need to be thinking more about our soil, and plants all give some form of nutrients to the soil, but hemp has one of the highest. And obviously how farmers work, they typically, let's say wheat, for example. Well, typically a farmer will need to break that cycle to give nutrients back to the soil, because if you have a monoculture, it's bad for the soil, it's bad for the earth. And then they typically will put another plant in to just add different nutrients, whatnot. Well, hemp isn't one of the best, if not the best, crop cycle plants. There's obviously issues with legislation, and just for your listeners, the biggest myth: hemp is not cannabis. It hasn't got THC in it. Hemp is a variety of the cannabis plant, cannabis sativa, but it has less than 0.3% THC. So if you tried smoking hemp, it would be no different to trying to smoke oats, smoking grass, smoking a plant. It literally it would do nothing to you. You'd probably just get a lot of white smoke, and you'd probably feel quite sick. So that's the biggest myth. I still get people saying to me, "Can I get high off your product?" No, you cannot. Different genus of the plant. So yeah, that's a really carbon guzzling, add nutrients to the soil, sustainable, needs little water. Again, the more you read, the more you're like, wow, this is incredible. It's so that's, and then from a nutritional perspective, I mean, what I even start? It's it's so, as we mentioned earlier about protein and our bodies not being able to break down and absorb protein. Well, 65% of hemp is made out of edestin globulin, which is a perfect protein for human consumption. It has all essential amino acids. So we can basically break down the protein in hemp at a far greater rate than anything else. I believe it's one of the only in the plant kingdom that does that. Which is obviously typically, where do you get your protein from? Well, a good idea is whether it's beans, or you can also add hemp into your diet. And then we have omega-3 and omega-6, which are healthy fats that we will need in our diets, and it has them in the perfect ratio. So yeah, that is hemp in a nutshell. It's and that's amazing. The thing. It's like the more you read, the more you're like, whoa, this is incredible. So if you can factor in hemp into your diet, it's certainly going to benefit you. It's a superfood. It is, different to like a flaxseed or, chia seeds, or those kind of like new ancient grain products. If you can add hemp, whether it's drinking our products or whether it's spreading hemp seeds onto your cereal, onto your smoothies. So yeah, and there's versions of how you get that, whether that's a whole hemp seed or whether that's a dehulled hemp seed, which is a hemp heart, which is how we make our milk. So yeah, so we have we've made two products. We've made in the plant-based industry. We make a hemp and oat milk, and in a 1 liter, so your barista-standard, that's similar to many other brands you probably see on the high street. And then we have a chocolate milk, which is hemp and coconut cream, and obviously sustainable cacao. So that's our two products. We launched in January, doing really well. Got featured in Vogue in February, and now it's just about rolling that out and building that business. And for us, it's keep growing more products. We have a whole list of range of products we can go into, from health bars to ice creams to nut butters to pesto. What we can do is endless. And our job is really to get hemp into the mass market, to knock down those barriers of misconceptions, and And for us, categorically, the reason we call it Gaia's Farming Co. is Gaia is Mother Earth. The more hemp we plant, the more farmers get into hemp, the more we help the planet out.
It's just the stats just incredible. Like from an environmental standpoint, health, whichever way you come at it, those stats you just reeled off there, just amazing. But the big question that's sort of like was been floating around my mind as you were blowing my mind with all those different facts is why on earth is this not all over the place? Given that it's got all of these climate change benefits and the health benefits and quick to grow and better for the topsoil and like.
I think it's twofold. I think you got to look at the historical context. So in the 1930s, with the birth of plastics, fossil fuels, you had a lot of lobbying going on in the American system, American government, where they saw it as a threat. If we can go back even further, hemp has been traced back to thousands of years ago being used as a fiber. When the UK colonized the US, there was a tax in place that made the US colonies give hemp or grow hemp to give back to the British so we can use it for sows, we can use it for paper. So it was pretty much part of history. It's been for thousands of years. And then in the 1930s, in the birth of the oil industry, you saw this shift. And I won't mention names because these companies still exist to this day, but certain companies are lobbied against hemp because they saw a threat to the paper industry, because because for the same acreage of land you can get 4 times more pulp than you can from wood. You use less chemicals, right. And some of these companies were the biggest forestries in the US. They didn't like the threat of hemp. You also saw the birth of plastics. Hemp can be made into biopolymer, so you can literally replace fossil-derived hydrocarbon plastics with hemp. And with hemp-derived bioplastics. So again, it's like many things. They basically associated it with cannabis and the THC variety, and it was banned. The only countries that never banned it globally were France and China. And guess what? They're both leading countries in hemp agriculture and hemp development. It got legalized in 1993. So think how long that was that it was banned for. It was legalized in 1993 in the UK. To this day, you have to have a license to grow it in the UK, which, let's be very frank, I completely appreciate. From a novice's eye, it looks like cannabis, a THC variety. So it looks the same. The only way you'd see different if you go into like the meta of it. If you grew cannabis for a THC, you wouldn't want it to be really tall. You want the flowers. You want that fast growth of flowers, as a lot of hemp farmers will grow it for the length. So you would see a difference. Also, you'd smell the difference as well, typically. If you're growing for THC, it would smell a lot different. So you have to have a license. You have to apply for it on the Home Office. You have to have a criminal history. But all these things, these barriers, and the little things like it can't be near a school, it can't be near an airport, it has to be a certain distance from a road. So you have these farmers who just don't want to get involved in that legislation, don't want the hassle of it, and it's £500 to apply for this license. So, categorically from a farmer's perspective, it makes more sense to use it as a crop break or to grow it in its entirety. But do they want the hassle? I know I spoke to a farmer recently, and his insurance just cancelled his insurance with him for no other reason than they don't want to get involved in that. And it's like, so just the hassle, right? Do I want to grow hemp? They have to really be believers in it. And it needs companies that are disruptive like us that are going to push and say, no more. We're going to make a difference here. We're going to show what Challenger brands can do. And once the consumer demands it, it will affect the government. It affects the legislation. It has the Kabbalah theory. It affects everything else. For me, the problem is that since 2018, the US has legalized hemp to be grown in every state. 2018, the Farm Act bill, I think it was called. We've been legalizing since 1993. You see the growth in America. The UK just don't care. And it's like this, from an economic perspective, would be incredible. Like what you can do for farmers, what we can do for industry. It's mind blowing. So again, it needs companies to push the government to be like, really adopt this. Even like from an economic perspective, I was looking at some research recently, and listen to this, your listeners will go crazy for this. Farmers in the UK cannot grow hemp for CBD. So CBD is people have heard of CBD. Some people might think it's a fad, whatnot, whatever. Yeah. The point is, it's a booming market. So in the UK, hemp farmers have to burn their flower, right? So they're not allowed to use the flower. We in the UK can import CBD from the rest of the world. So they allow us to import CBD from other farmers, but we can't support our own farmers in the UK. And for, let's say, an acre of hemp grown, a farmer, let's say, will get £20,000, hypothetical number, £20,000 for seed, for fiber they can sell. If they were able to grow that flower for CBD, they'd make £120,000, and they have to watch it burn. So we're not even supporting the farmers in this own country. Imagine, but yet I get it if the government was saying no CBD anywhere, we're banning it across the board. But we allow us to import it. So you have these rookies building white label businesses, importing CBD. We have no really understanding of the spectrum from China, from Eastern Europe, from France. But yet we're not looking after where we can control the situation in the UK. So I'm sure you can imagine the frustrations of the UK system.
That's crazy.
But there are rumours that it is in the works. People are talking about it. The Home Office understand there's an issue. It's just priorities, right? They're too busy having parties than they are actually getting stuff done. So.
This episode of the Bloody Vegans podcast is brought to you by VegOne from the Vegan Society. VegOne is the nutritional vitamin and mineral supplement designed for vegans by vegans. Launched back in 2005 and rebranded in 2021 with a fantastic new plastic-free package, VegOne provides nutritional support alongside a healthy and balanced vegan diet, all for an affordable price. With a 6-month supply available for just £12.70, VegOne will cost you little over £2 a month and offers EU nutrient reference values, or NRVs, of vitamin B12, D3, iodine, selenium, B2, B6 and folic acid. VegOne is chewable, it's affordable and reliable, you can take it once a day, it's available in fantastic orange and blackcurrant flavours, super easy and convenient, completely plastic free. So why not head over to vegansociety.com, search for VegOne and take your next healthy steps into the world of veganism.
And so this is all from a misplaced fear that, I don't know, that we're going to have a bunch of drug smuggling and
I think
drug dealing going on and whatever.
If you allowed
That's crazy.
hemp to be unregulated, you're going to have people take advantage of the system, for sure. It's going to happen. I don't have any qualms with there being a license. I have qualms with how slow it is, how the red tape. The Home Office don't have a department really. If we had they built a department that focused solely on developing hemp, it would be a joy to work with. It would be a joy to watch it grow. And what they realize is that the economic benefit of that would be huge, both for themselves, for industry, whether that's for construction industry, and also hemp is clean tech. It is a carbon guzzling machine. We have this idea of going to net zero. Well, let's use hemp for that. So yeah.
Yeah, crazy.
Yeah,
absolutely crazy. What needs to happen then first? Do you think? Do you think this is a sort of change at governmental level, or do you think that needs to be pushed by public demand? What's your view of that?
Multi-pronged. I think you need both. You need a consumer that understands what hemp is. There's a demand for it, and that just means more hemp products on the market. And listen, I do think that hemp has a history of being the hippie movement and hemp bags and hemp shoes, and they all just look crap, right? But when you have these challenger brands, when I say challenger brands, what I define them as is brands that challenge the status quo, challenge what's the reality of what's around us. They make an impact. They try different things. They They might not always get it right, but they try to challenge people's perceptions of what's right and wrong. And when you have, and even from a branding perspective, they just look good. They're aesthetically pleasing, which I'd say we are. You know, we knew that we could build a brand. It's whether we can handle the operations side of working with suppliers and farming and processing machinery, which we're getting there. But we've built a great brand. So when you go to the shop floor and you see a product and you see our product and you pick that over another product because you're like, wow, this is impacting the environment. Part of that, I want to have a good contribution. And then it also, by that, you have a demand. By that, when you go to a supermarket, when there's, let's say, if I use Whole Foods, for example, it's very easy. You can go there, you can find hemp pesto, you can find hemp hearts, you can find hemp milks. Not that they're all very good, but that's another story. But you go to like I said, Tesco or a Morrison's, it doesn't exist. I think you go to the world. I think you go to the world area, you can find hemp hearts, and they're very, very expensive, or hemp oil in some areas, hemp seed pressed oil, which is like an olive oil, but just without saturated fats. Once you see more on the shelves, you'll start seeing that shift. Once there's more demand, you see that, and that will just correlate back to the supply. Back to the farmers, back to the processors. Once it gets cheaper, it gets more accessible. But then you also need an engaged government that want to do something about it. You know, I know of a farmer that had land. He went to a landowner who was an MP, and he sold the vision of hemp. An MP loved it. He bid for the land. The landowner in principle said yes. They had many discussions, and he get a new person to hemp. A month later, he got notified that another farmer had outbid him for a different crop. The MP didn't really care about hemp anymore. So the point is that once you have people in power that are engaged, that want to do something about it, that realize there's more to life than just making money, there's an ethical stance, there's a legacy stance, then you'll have movement. And that's not going to be overnight, but that you need companies like us that are going to, fight for it. Look at, Oatly, for example. Before Oatly existed, plant-based milk was soy milk. Oatly came in and I'd call them a challenger brand, and really disrupted the market. And I Oatly make mistakes, and there's lots of criticism for Oatly, but I find them a very classy business and a very classy company, and we wouldn't be here today. They've really spearheaded the plant-based movement, and it's incredible. So then from Oatly, you start seeing all these new brands. Beyond Meat, I mean, the ethics of whether you like cellular, lab-grown, plant-based meats like Beyond or Impossible, and there's a few that making lab-grown meat, cellular meat, which is in another world which I don't know too much about, but I find it quite weird and crazy. Once Beyond Meat and Impossible start doing what they've done, guess what? Hundreds of other businesses start following suit. They want a piece of the pie. It's just a process.
Thinking about the shift in public perception that's required, like you say, there's the old image of what hemp is associated with. It's either drug use or it's hemp bags and hemp sandals and that kind of vibe. Thinking about that shift, although, like you've said, there's a different genus, I think, in the plant and so on. Do you think the rise of CBD is kind of helpful in a way to sort of piggyback the message off of it, or do you not really see that there's a connection?
The government have said that they are looking and monitoring CBD. They've publicly said, we are looking into this, and we will do tests and we will do research, and they've created a body of people, experts, let's say, to evaluate CBD. I don't think it's a simple answer of yes, it's helped, no, it's not helped. I think in general, it's helped overall because it brings a product to market, but then it hasn't done very well to educate what CBD is. Hemp has over 110 cannabinoids. CBD is one of them. Over 110. You
Right.
see our research in the other over 110. If you see the research we've done on 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, every single one of those has an impact. Like, it's Mother Earth gave us this plant for a reason. I saw, recently there's a bit of publicity around 2 cannabinoids found in hemp because they prevent COVID. And it's mental. And then what happened is I saw Vice News post an article on Twitter and on their feed, cannabis, and then all the comments, great, I'm going to smoke more cannabis. And it's like, you're going to have this issue, right? And it's not even the same genus, the same plant.
Yeah.
Then you have, I saw recently I think I actually put it on my LinkedIn, a study on a cannabinoid called NFT, not the crypto version, which is to do with processing organisms in the body, and it helps develop functions and flows in the body. And it's like these are the very, very early days of understanding cannabinoids, and THC is a cannabinoid in the cannabis version, and actually, ironically, CBD does the opposite of THC. They're supposed to counter each other. It's just the one we know of,
Right.
So, simple answer is yes. It's brought attention to the market, but no, it's kind of wishy-washy, And there's companies that use the idea of CBD and they don't really educate the market. But look, no one's perfect. We're all just trying to. Why do you do anything, right? Is it for an ethical stance? Is it try to make some money? When the CBD market first boomed, 100%, everyone was trying to make a quick buck. No one knew what it was. People were importing it from China, white labeling it. Not that there's anything wrong with the Chinese market. The point is that they were the first adopted to be like, white label, here you go. Did you see the spectrum? Did you see the analysis? No, they're bringing into the country. So the government said, "Whoa, stop to this. We need to kind of like find out where your CBD is from." The players in the market now that sell CBD are reputable because they're still around. John and Dave, the found a person to supply it and just drop shipped it. That didn't help. Especially when they put the price, their ethics, their position is very different. They're not in it because they care about hemp. They're in it because they're trying to make money and they see an opportunity. And trust me, many people did make a lot of money. But everything has maturity, just like whether we talk about the crypto situation or we talk about plant-based movement, veganism, everything has a transitional phase. And I think hemp, because if you talk to hemp people who know hemp, they're clearly clued up. They know what they're talking about. But the mass market don't. So it's about educating them.
Well, look, Michael, you've educated me today. My mind is absolutely blown. I feel like I'm going to rush out and get some hemp seeds and
awesome
get cracking because 100%, 100%. And on that note, where do folks go about finding Gaia's Farm?
Go direct online onto our website, but you can find it in retailers like restaurants, retailers like Meat Burger, which is like a vegan burger joint. We've got Panzers in North London. We're in discussion with all the major supermarkets. So at the moment, it's going to happen. Obviously, as I said, we launched in January, so we're still early days. But you can get us direct online. Maybe I'll even throw in a discount code for you.
Definitely recommend folks check it out. Oh yeah, that'd be awesome. Yeah, let's do that as well. That'd be nice. Yeah, we'll pop the links in the show notes, the discount codes, etc. And I'll just recommend everybody check it out.
It's one of those things. Do your own research, and you'll be as bamboozled as I was when I first looked into it. You can go really meta into it, like I did, and go into every single science paper, or just Google it, and you just look at the Wikipedia pages. The top level stuff is all there. That's been a pleasure. Thank you very much.
Michael, thank you. It's been a pleasure.